A big welcome to all the viewers watching another episode of Soul to Soul Talk Show. Continuing this journey, we have with us Brother Neville Hodgkinson from UK, whom, as I had introduced before, is an eminent speaker, a journalist, a correspondent, a medical and science correspondent, and an author. A pleasure to have you with us, brother.
Hello,
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So, in the previous episodes from the journey that we have covered so far, brother shared with us all his spiritual experiences that he has had in his professional life, his personal life, and how it brought about a drastic change in him from being an almost atheist person to a person who now has a relationship with God. So that deep is the spiritual knowledge that he has got now, and we will be speaking more about this in this episode. Brother, could you share with us how long it took for you to, develop this depth in the spiritual knowledge that you have right now have, and what efforts did you make to get this depth?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, because in one sense I got it instantly.
Okay.
It's a very strange thing, and in another sense it's taken me 30 years, to deepen the understanding and really develop the complete conviction about the rightness of these teachings. That really has taken time. But when I first met Brahmakumaris in London, there was such a radiance from them. It was them that I was really impressed by, not as human beings, but like some memory came back inside that this is truth. They had a vibration, a kindness, a positivity, a peace, which I felt was really missing inside me. I didn't realize it was missing until I met them, but they were like beacons of light in some way. And I got that immediately, that this is some kind of truth. This is missing in my life, and I really want it back again in my life. So,
you felt you had it once in your life before?
I felt as if, when I say I felt it was missing, I felt as if I was looking for something like this in life.
Okay.
I didn't know that I would have lost it, but I did feel that this was truth and I didn't have it. And somehow I wanted that. And so that was what motivated me to undertake this very substantial journey from being a scoop-seeking, award-winning, egotistical journalist, really chasing life in a very materialistic way, in many ways. And I was married, as I explained, and sons, and a materialistic lifestyle. So much change from that, that I needed the power of that initial experience, I think, to see me through it, because it has been quite a journey. Quite a big journey. But now I would say that the conviction has truly developed. I understand that there is a supreme source of truth, and that I can draw power from that source when I make my mind still, really still. And the whole of the Brahmakumari's teachings actually are concerned with living and seeing others in ways that allow you to maintain that inner peace that allows you to keep that connection with the divine. Now it's very clear to me, but it really has been quite a journey, because I had many attachments to people, to positions, to possessions, and all of these gradually had to fall away before I could really speak with this kind of conviction about this beautiful truth that lies at the heart of these teachings.
And what efforts did you make to, say, practically imbibe this knowledge?
At the beginning, as I say, I received the gift when I came into the company of the yogi teachers. I felt that vibration, and so it was just a question of, like a moth to a flame, whenever I could go into the gathering, I did. So I took on board the idea that getting up early in the morning to remember these beautiful ideas and teachings, whenever I could to join the morning class, and my work hours allowed me to do that, actually, because being on a newspaper, daily and Sunday newspapers, I would start work later in the day than many, so I could do that, and we would finish late. But so I got into the habit of attending the spiritual study regularly, and luckily my whole family were happy to switch to a vegetarian diet because the sisters told me that would help. And other aspects of lifestyle change, like gradually I found that I didn't really want to continue with the same sort of circle of dinner parties and drinking that I'd been involved in previously, because I found that got in the way of this sweet, nectareous experience that I was getting from the meditation. And so those things started to fall away. And that was a little bit of a difficulty in the home, because my wife wasn't experiencing these things in the same way as me. So we laughed about it and we negotiated and gradually moved forward in that way. But there were immediate benefits in the home as well, where instead of being rather sensitive and needy of my wife's affections or my children's affections, you know, instead, because of the substance that was coming inside me through this practice, making that shift from an ego identity to real soul identity, that was making me stronger. So I was becoming more giving in the home as well as in the workplace.
So you were understanding too, that
more understanding, exactly, and more able to listen to others, more able to see them more in 3 dimensions instead of like an extension of myself. You know, my children, I started seeing them as souls, not as points of light, but more like in the sense that they were multidimensional. Instead of just thinking of them as mine, they became these people that I happened to live with and have responsibility for. And they benefited a lot from that, actually, I think. And some of them have well, one of our sons has written quite a bit about this subsequently. And he says that although it was rather confusing at times, this change that came in the house from his dad going spiritual, as he called it, but nevertheless, he said his parents couldn't have been more supportive. So I think actually that there were benefits that came through at the same time as there was these challenges.
But did it take time for these benefits to show up?
No, no. The benefits in terms of personal relationships came very quickly like that. But what took me time was developing the really deep conviction about the reality of all of this. That took me time because I had such a scientific, materialistic outlook. It also, you know, I'd been very distasteful of religion previously. I thought people have done such terrible things in the name of God, you know, slaughtered millions or whatever in the name of my God or your God. I thought it's all rubbish. I really did feel that very strongly. Because now I understand that it's not that it's all rubbish, but that the way people have interpreted God has been very mistaken. But what I learned from these studies was that where people go wrong is when they try and live religion in an external way, through defining themselves my religion or my appearance or you know, my holy manner or something like that. None of that is important. What's really important is that we live in ways that are in keeping with our humanity, our goodness as children of that one Father, as offspring of the Supreme. When we live in ways that are counter to that, we can't connect with that one. We can't taste the sweetness of that relationship. And I soon learnt that. That became my guide on a daily basis. If I got drawn into being egotistical again or got angry or things like that, I'd find I'd lose the joy of the meditation and the remembrance. But if I kept myself peaceful and if I made my motivations positive, then I found that at the end of the day, after my day's work was done, I would be able to remember that one sweetly and peacefully and sleep peacefully. So it took me time, but it was like this beautiful experience became my teacher, the experience of this truth.
Did you ever lose hope in this time that it took for you to finally achieve the state that you are in now? Did you ever lose hope that, okay, this is not working out for me, this lifestyle?
No, I never lost hope, and I kept going, but there were times when I was a bit despairing in myself. You know, like when some old habits of anger or upset would come up, and whilst gripped by that, I would lose confidence in myself for a while. But fortunately, the Brahmakumaris in London are quite a presence, and you know, there are a lot of centres, and I had quite a lot of friends, fellow travellers on this journey, and the fact that I had this extended family and guides, experienced guides that I could talk through my problems, they gave me support, and I'd get through it.
Now that you are a spiritual person, have you been able to throw this, say, vibe or this aura to others, just like the way you had experienced when you first met the yogis before? Yeah, that made you like believe this is the truth.
I think I'm getting closer to doing that, but it does seem as if it's something that is, the power to really radiate that requires a lot of inner purity, a lot. And I've had quite a lot of impurity to remove before I can start feeling that the account of purity really increases, if you get my meaning.
But how did you judge the amount of purity in you?
It's the power of the feeling that you can sustain this connection with God in action. Now I experienced very beautiful meditations and did from the beginning, but I would lose that sense of tranquility when I came into action. Sometimes, you know, like in the newspaper office, I'd get caught up in my work again. Right. There was immediate improvement, but to really reach the point where you are radiant as a yogi, you actually have to really remove all these things that cause you disturbance, because it's like a battery that will discharge quickly if you allow a break or a leak in it. So one of the things that continued to cause that leakage in me was that I didn't realize that I had a slightly wrong attitude towards, well, in one sense, it's like small, but it's also big, a wrong attitude towards family. Very interesting issue. I've always loved my family. I loved family life. I loved being a father before I started this study as well as afterwards. And I feel as if the study helped me to be a better father. And although my marriage finished some years back, I feel also that I became a better friend to my ex-wife, and we are very good friends and we do a lot together. But what was wrong still was that there was an element in me, where I call it my family man identity, that wanted to be sure that I was a good family man. And if you get my meaning, that's a kind of taking. It's a bit like the ego wants to be sure that he is a good family man, and therefore he's trying to prove himself as a good family man. That's actually a form of social conditioning or ego or something from my own personality that is not pure giving from the soul. This is quite subtle, but I didn't recognize this for many years, and recently, after I did discover that this family man identity was sometimes causing a conflict of loyalties between me in my everyday life and my love for God. It was sometimes there was a conflict there. And removing this family man identity, I did it as a sort of spiritual surgery on myself, almost like going in with my willpower, once I'd realized it was there, and tearing it out, not violently, but drawing it out a bit like a surgeon might take out a tumor inside my being. And it made an amazing difference. It really has released a lot of power, because when you've got a conflict of interests or loyalties going on inside you, it stops you from actually building power. And I hope that now that this operation has happened, that I will actually be able to build more power and become more of a yogi who, as you say, you know, shares those vibrations. We are sure you will be.
Thank you. And brother, now that you have been a student of science and now you're a student of spirituality, do you, in any, taking up any of the laws or concepts of science, do you feel that science in any way strengthens your belief in spirituality?
Yes, I've continued to study frontier science. That is science which is really saying we need to broaden our understanding of reality beyond just the material. So I've studied aspects of quantum theory, a branch of physics, theoretical physics to some degree, where the mathematics takes the scientists way beyond what they can observe in the material sense, through which they try to answer some of the deeper secrets about the nature of reality. And the new biology, which is showing the very intimate connections between our thoughts, our feelings, our mental states, our physiological states, and our genetic function. So, for example, it's now understood that the genes are not just the secret of life in the sense of dictating who we are and running us. Actually, we run our genes. According to the way I think and feel, my genes will actually operate in certain ways. They will produce certain proteins, for example, that give me more energy, or that shut me down because I'm feeling insecure. They're very responsive to the thoughts and feelings that I'm having at any particular time. So I'm very interested in the way science at the frontiers is actually pointing towards the spiritual dimension as being very important.
So you study both together?
Yes, I'm continuing to study the science that is, as I say, this broader science that is taking us towards understanding that there's much more to the world than the material dimension. In fact, there's an emerging paradigm in science that is, an emerging view that is very different from the materialistic paradigm, which says that matter is primary and mind is something that comes from the brain. There's an emerging view that says, no, we're not our brains. We're something much deeper than that. And we run our brains. Our brains are like a tool, like the rest of the body, a piece of hardware that enables us to manage this physical world, but that actually we are not our brains, we're something deeper than our brains. The brain is almost like a filter on reality that makes it manageable. But reality includes a much deeper informational matrix, an enormous sea of information, and the brain, and in fact probably the genes, select out of that massive matrix of information what is relevant to me to manage my life on a daily basis. Very different worldview from the one that science has had for the last 300 years, which said matter is primary and mind is just some epiphenomenon of brain function.
Have you been writing articles or books to convey this study that you're doing?
I've written one or two pieces in this area, but I've wanted to try to get a really firm understanding on it before writing a further book in this area, but I've got it in mind to do some more. I find it so interesting.
So will that be like in a list of the purposes that you want to do in the future?
Yes, it's definitely part of my aim, because I feel that the present belief system that the world has taken on board, when I say the world, obviously it's not everybody, but actually the dominant belief system in today's world is a materialistic one. I have a soul, but the idea that actually we are spirit and that we have bodies, that's not very common. And I think that the idea, this materialistic philosophy that people have bought into so strongly on a global scale is actually like a toxic belief system. I believe it's the source of a lot of our insecurity and fear, a lot of the stress that we suffer. Because when we identify with the material world, when I think that Neville is just this lump of matter who lives for a while, strives in his job, has children and then dies, when I think that's all I am, because this material side to my life is here today and gone tomorrow, it's inevitably temporary. All material world is in state of constant change. So if I think that's who I am, I'm bound to suffer stress at some point. As what I have physically is here today, gone tomorrow. My job, if it means everything to me and I'm threatened with losing it, I'll be extremely stressed. But if I understand that the job is just something that as part of a scene that I'm enjoying and it's useful for me and to try and contribute through it to others, but it's not actually me, then any changes that happen in that area, it's not like a threat to me, it's just a changing scene. This is the yogi outlook, which as one develops it more and more in different areas of life, really frees us of this toxicity, of the stress, of this over-identification with the material world. Very important shift, I think, for the world. But because the world's respect science so much because of its achievements,
right.
I feel that it would be great to highlight the work of scientists who are pointing to this spiritual dimension as being the real source of life and truth.
We'll be looking for this work from you, Brother.
Well, thank you.
Brother, lastly, from all the experience that you've shared so far in these episodes, would you like tell or categorize all the changes that you have shared with us in your life as a spiritual person as positive, or are there any changes that you have felt are negative, or okay, this is not a change that I want, that should have happened but has happened because I have taken the spiritual knowledge? Are there any changes like that, or all the changes that you have gone through are positive on the spiritual journey?
Even the negative things, there's been some painful experiences where things that were dear to me have fallen away, and that was partly because I was very attached to them, and so it hurt when they fell away, but in the longer perspective it was of benefit, because wherever you're holding on to something, it means that you're, in that tight way, it means that you're not really in the state of truth that I'm aspiring to. And so the fact that I was holding on to these things and then they got sort of drawn away from me by destiny, where that has happened, I now see that as having been of profound benefit, because it helped me move forward on my spiritual journey, whereas otherwise I might have been stuck just holding on to something as a substitute for making spiritual progress. So I do feel actually that everything has been of benefit now, even though at times it hasn't always felt like it. It's great fun. The spiritual journey is massively life-enriching. This is what I feel, and I really am passionate about people knowing about it, because some people naturally understand its value, but others who've got seduced by science and materialism in that narrow perspective, so much suffering comes from that. We can free ourselves from that, make ourselves free to love, because we are love. We really are love. I'm totally convinced of this now. Our nature is of love. But when we are not loving, to the extent that we're not, it's because we are in a state of illusion where we've got caught up with externals. We hurt when those externals don't work the way we want them to, and we lose the truth of our love. So by following the spiritual journey, changing one's outlook to understanding that we're a soul, a child of the Supreme, we become free to love, and that's a wonderful goal in life.
Brother, finally, would you like to suggest any sort of techniques that our viewers can experiment with to change their belief or their views on spirituality?
I think spirituality is a subject of universal importance, but the way individuals live it and apply it in their lives is very unique and individual. So some people will gain great benefit from practicing reflection, contemplation, giving themselves time for introspection, self-examination. I've gained greatly from these sort of techniques. But there are others, like my friend Liz Hodgkinson, my ex-wife, who she doesn't find that introspection and reflection and meditation are helpful. But what she finds helpful is studying the arts and literature and things like this, so that ancient wisdom can be taken into her life. So people are very, very different in the way that they move forward, and the way they perceive things. I think their needs are very different as well. So some people perhaps have lost their freedom to the vices and to being caught by the material side of life more. I would put myself as having been in that category, and therefore needing more drastic measures to free myself from it. But other people, if they're able to live lightly, if they're able to live with a good spiritual inner awareness, not necessarily labeling it as spiritual, but they have that lightness about life, then that's fine. You know, that's like the deities who don't worry about these things. They just get on with life. But I do feel enormously grateful to the Brahma Kumaris, who've been very good guides for me. And I would say that those who feel that they have moved away from this truth, that it has to different degrees left their life so that they are feeling unhappiness, which is the mark of a lack of spiritual awareness, then I think it's very good to try and find some guides to move forward together. I don't think we can really do it on our own. I think the Brahmakumaris have been great companions for me, but there are other great spiritual traditions that a person might feel drawn to, and I think that help can come from many different quarters of this kind, although I do feel that the key that unites us all, which is a slogan that the Brahmakumaris have been using a lot actually recently, is that there is one God and one world family. So the way we express our spirituality, ourselves, may differ, but I do think that through silence, through stillness, through disengaging from the material pulls of life, by bringing more balance into our lives, by being more aware of that dimension of things, we can know God and bring God's truth down into the world. That's, I think, is the real need of the times and the call of our time.
Wow. So, as suggested by Brother, that each person, you and me, is an independent individual, but spirituality and this change in the outlook can bring a new lightness, a new better sort of a lifestyle in your in the way you live and in the relationships that you have and in your profession and everything. But that requires a first step from your side to open up to different views from different guides that you meet, and not just discard spirituality as a boring topic left to the swinging 60s, but experiment with it before concluding on it. Thank you, Brother, for sharing such valuable experiences with us, and we hope to read more works from you.
Thank you, Surenya.
Thank you, viewers, for joining us in this journey with Brother Neville.
It was a pleasure to be with you.
Pleasure to be with you too, sir. Thank you, viewers, for joining us in this episode. We hope to meet you again with yet another eminent personality. Thank you for joining us and have a great time.